deal about it, and these were symbolic workings. It was a plan, actually. I think what we have out here is a rhythmic, some sort of a rhythmic plan of creation that is represented in these great stones.
Could you explain that a little bit further, Dr.
No, it's impossible, really, to delve into the minds of the ancients. They worked in their own way, and we think we can explain them, but we cannot. And I've been doing enough work in these various areas, especially in the caves, to be absolutely certain that they were in command of forces that we don't understand and we've lost.
But the pattern of those subtle forces is starting to glimmer more and more brightly just beneath the surface of our inquiries. As well as discoveries in England, there have been important revelations from the Soviet Union. Christopher Bird, co-author of The Secret Life of Plants, has distilled the Russians' dramatic research.
The main thrust of the article, based on studies made by the three collaborators of data taken from fields as widely separated as archaeology, geochemistry, ornithology, and meteorology, was the suggestion that the Earth projects from within itself to the surface a dual geometrically regularized grid. The first part of this grid forms 12 pentagonal slabs over the sphere, from which evidence the research triumvirate suggested that the first shape of the Earth had just such an outline. In other words, it was a dodecahedron. While this allegation may seem fantastic at the outset, the idea of the Earth as a geometric shape goes back in history at least to the Pythagorean school of thinking in ancient Greece. Its famous adherent, Plato, wrote that the Earth, viewed from above, resembles a ball sewn from 12 pieces of skin. The first intriguing characteristic found by the Russians was that the ribs of their dual grid coincide with mid-oceanic ridges, core faults, and zones of active risings and depressions on the ocean floors. If one looks at vertices of the triangles, one finds one of them in the region near Florida, at, or very near, the center of the much-heralded Devil's Bermuda Triangle, recently celebrated for the mysterious disappearance of ships and planes. The Russians also mention that Ivan Sanderson, the professional biologist who founded the Society for the Investigation of the Unexplained in Columbia, New Jersey, has written that the triangle is not the only infamous region on the Earth's surface, but that there are 9 others. The 10 regions, says Sanderson, are symmetrically situated around the globe, 5 above, 5 below, at equal distances from the equator. Had the American investigator thought to add 2 more points, at the North and South Poles, say the Russians, his scheme would have precisely coincided with the model which they have adopted. Another characteristic which caught the attention of the threesome was that of the coincidence of the various edges of their polygons with the junctures of slabs or plates which many scientists credit with being the regions where volcanic and seismic activity proliferate. Checking magnetic maps, the Russians also found that the centers of all world magnetic anomalies overlap with the vertices of the polygons in their grid. They point out that in crystals, the most interesting events take place at the nodes and edges of the crystal lattice. If their hypothesis is correct, as they allege, just such a structural lattice may run through our planet to determine events occurring on its surface.
Atlantology has long been a prestigious and flourishing enterprise in the Soviet Union, where more than 4 times as many publications are produced annually on the subject than in the West. The doyen of Soviet Atlantologists was a Dr. N.T. Zhirov, who described his discipline in this way.
The task of scientific Atlantology is first and foremost to deduce hard facts from historical sources and myths, including the Plato legend, and find corroboration of these facts and considerations in the data obtained from different fields of science. On a larger scale, Atlantology seeks to establish the relationship between the possibility of large land areas, and even continents, having existed and been destroyed, and the problem of human settlement and development. It may be said that at its present stage, Atlantology is going through a transitional period of development, a period characterized by its formation into a science and departure from fantasy and pseudo-scientific fabrications. Pseudo-Atlantological works include the numerous books published abroad in the past few decades on the subject, Atlantis, Golden Age of Mankind. This literature is permeated with a mystical, idealistic spirit and has nothing in common with a scientific approach to the problem. I should like to note that the interference of the Atlantomaniacs has greatly harmed science, for it discredited the Atlantis problem in the eyes of many scientists.
I got a book written by the Russians who were on the Lemont expedition.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And they claim that there is geological evidence to indicate that there was a freshwater island continent landmass between America and Europe about 12,000 years ago. How would this tie in with your theories?
Exactly parallel. Precisely the same. It would be an Atlantean uplift, yes. There are valleys there that indicate rivers that flowed from east to west down an Atlantean continental mass.
That's what he discovered. Yes, he got freshwater mollusks and
yes,
other evidence. One final question, Dr. Valentine. Sorry to have taken so much of your time.
That's a pleasure.
But do you believe then that these structures did form part of Atlantis, or would they have been part of an out island, or what?
Well, I think so. These are just outlying areas, and it could be that they are extremely old. I believe that Atlantis existed through the entire Tertiary, and during the Pleistocene it was broken up by successive cataclysms. The first one, which ushered in the Pleistocene from the Pliocene, was the most severe, and evidently there was a complete flip of the Earth. The poles just changed places, terrific devastation, and after that, the three subsequent ones broke it up.
So Atlantis can be seen as the submerged matrix of a vast planetary grid, making itself felt on both sides of the Atlantic. Here's James Sturziker, an author and founder of the International Order of Kabbalists in London.
There is, around the whole coast of the Atlantic, various names that could be related to this particular continent. We have, for instance, the Atlas Mountains. There is a race of people called the Atlans. And there were, round about South America, a race of people that we referred to as the Atlantes. Then we have other coincidences which are pointed out in Donnelly's book. A pipe with a particular type of carving was found in South America, the same type of carving as a pipe in Ireland. Could this be coincidence? From Plato's Critias, we learn that the Atlanteans built houses of white, black, and red stone. Whitish, calcareous terrain, black and red volcanic rocks are found on the Azores. And if we accept the soundings that have been made by various expeditions from time to time, we find that the islands of the Azores are mountain tips, presumably from some sunken continent. In dealing with the problem of Atlantis, we must take into account the continental drift theory of Professor Alfred Wegener, which postulates that 225 million years ago, all continents were united. The profile of the Americas and the geographical contours of Europe and Africa do indeed fit like a jigsaw puzzle. The Swedish vessel Albatross, ensound in the bed of equatorial Atlantic, discovered traces of fresh water plants at the depth of 2 miles. Professor Hans Petersen, who led the expedition, thought that an island must have sunk at that spot. Scientists working for Lemont Geological Observatory in the USA.